Thank you very much. Welcome to the Town of Rocky Mountain House for January 9th of 2024. This is the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first order of business is the adoption of the agenda, to adopt the agenda for January 9th, 2024. Is there any changes to the agenda as presented? Seeing none, I guess we're looking for a motion. Councillor Chappelle.
I will so move the agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So I'm very pleased today to say that our delegation are two ladies from Travel Alberta. We have Lisa and Dana, and they are going to give us a report about the new David Thompson Tourism Development Zone. So welcome very much. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all of you for listening today and then present. So I'll just...
I'm gonna ask you to press the middle button, and then it turns red when you're live. And thank you so much.
And I was notified to do that. Obviously, I don't take instructions too well.
Oh, no, it's perfect, and now you're at the right spot.
Great.
You've got it going.
So thanks very much. My name is Lisa Lima, for those of you who I have not met today, and I am a Destination Development Manager with Travel Alberta, which includes what we call West Country and Central Prairies, and the town of Rocky Mountain House, Clearwater County, reside within my region that I assist within Travel Alberta, and my colleague Dana.
Hi everyone, I'm Dana. I'm on the Corporate Communications and Stakeholder Engagement team with Travel Alberta. I'm working on the Tourism Development Zone project with Lisa. Thanks so much for having us today.
Thanks. So what we wanted today was just to provide you kind of with a high-level review of what we're calling our David Thompson Zone Discovery Report. And so before we get into that specific report, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background of where we came and why did we take on this initiative to do these discovery reports. So, is that changing? Perfect, great. So we had a lofty goal, and we have a lofty goal as a province of doubling tourism revenues to 20 billion by 2035. So that's been a bit of our mandate as we do that. And what came about with that is also Travel Alberta originally had been a marketing organization, and now we're what we call a destination development organization. So that's going to help us with kind of moving forward with those goals of the 20 billion. And of course, we know that we can't just rely on what we're calling our legacy destinations. So when we think of the city of Calgary and Edmonton, the Rockies, which would include Jasper and Banff, Lake Louise, Kananaskis area, Canmore, we know that they're great. We know that, you know, a lot of tourists want to come and see those areas of the province, which is fantastic, and we'll continue to promote those. But we also know that there's so many other cool places, interesting and fascinating areas throughout the province that we would need to kind of help elevate from a tourism perspective, the diverse topography and the landscape. So by doing so, this will help us reach our goal, because we did the research, and if we just kind of basically stayed the course we were going, we wouldn't get there. But this is where we need to elevate and look at different areas within the province to really grow tourism within the province and to help with that lofty goal of 20 billion by 2035.
Where are we now?
So where we are now is around, and maybe Dana can help me with that, I believe around 10 billion, just over 10 billion.
Yeah.
So of course COVID, didn't help in the process. So of course things kind of went back a bit or didn't move the needle for a little while. And now we're excited to say, things are we've come out of COVID. We are starting to see those international visitations, and they're continuing to grow. So I know personally when I've been talking to businesses throughout the province, they're very excited, and most of them have seen, for example, the past summer has been very good for them, which is great to hear. Great. So that gives you a bit of background on the overall strategy, and then now I'm just going to move into the Tourism Development Zone projects. So what we did was we looked, as I said, at some of the rural areas of the province and where did they have the most potential. So it was through a discussion of specifically my team, because we're out there working with industry partners, we're working with communities for several years, looking at where the most potential could be, as well as looking at some research as well. And this is where we've come up with our 10 tourism development zones. What's interesting, or what's great, is that they all kind of land throughout the province. So you'll see, you know, from the north to the south to east to west, they're all kind of spread out, which is great. But then there's great potential in the future for maybe some of them to interconnect with one another when it comes to building some itineraries and moving people around the province. And so the one today I'm going to be talking about specifically is the one we call the David Thompson Tourism Development Zone. I know that Rocky Mountain House, you'll see, is also in the Cochrane to Rocky Mountain House as shown on the map. However, what we've done is we started it with that because we know there's connectivity on both ends, because it's kind of at that meeting point when you think of Highway 22 and then it meets up with Highway 11. However, what the decision has been after some research and after, you know, as we discover and kind of dive deeper into these zones, is that Rocky Mountain House sits best with the David Thompson zone. And then what we're going to do is focus the other zone as more of a Cochrane to Sundre. Because of the alignment, we know that there's more alignment with Rocky Mountain House when we look at the David Thompson area. We know the type of product you have to offer aligns really nice, and we know you're already working collaboratively with that region, so it just made more sense. However, that being said, of course, if a traveler, let's say an international traveler, for example, comes into Calgary and flies in, you know, we can start to look at building itineraries so that maybe they drive out to Cochrane and then do Highway 22, the Cowboy Trail. We know it's all gorgeous, it's beautiful, so it becomes that option of coming up through, you know, Sundre, and then coming up to Rocky Mountain House, and then maybe heading west to 93, and then coming down through the Rockies, you know, and then they could do a very nice loop. Whereas in the past, maybe they've just gone from Calgary out to Banff and back again. Now we can create and disperse that traveler into different areas of the province. So there's still going to be that connectivity, but what it helps with is that Rocky Mountain will then be able to work clearly within this specific zone. So when we look at some of the numbers here, so what we did was we looked at a lot of research and also discussion to look at what sort of incremental numbers or potential. We wanted to look at what could the potential be for this zone. And we did this with all 10 zones to say, you know, how could we move the needle? What's it going to look like maybe in 2035? So the numbers that you're seeing are looking at exactly that, is that what could we do if we proceed, and we, I mean all of us as community, as county, as stakeholders, as businesses, the government, with Travel Alberta, how can we see what the potential is to grow this region of the province from an economic standpoint? So that's just, as I said, giving you some incremental numbers to think about. And then we also did engagement. So we hired some consultants back in the fall of 2022. And this was kind of the kickoff where we started to dive into more of building out the plan. So as part of that, the consultants did a lot of engagement with a variety of stakeholders. And I can show you here some of the numbers. So it was 137 actual stakeholders, 112 businesses. When we say two communities, that would be referencing Rocky Mountain House and Nordegg, and, you know, kind of in and around the Nordegg area and along Highway 11. So we did all of the engagement, and as well we had a steering committee. So each of the tourism development zones had consultants working on it, aligned with a steering committee. And each of the steering committee were made up of some businesses, some of the EDOs such as Jeff and Jerry, as well as I said, some of the leaders within the community, and both, again, people coming from Michelle from the Chamber of Rocky Mountain House is another example, and combined with being either Nordegg, Rocky Mountain House, kind of that whole mix. And they were to help support and kind of guide, provide a lot of input as the consultants went about diving into the plan and really getting to know the area and region and getting to understand what the potential was, you know, strengths, opportunities moving forward. So when we look into what we heard, And this is just some high level, gives you a few ideas. We heard lots, but some of the key things we heard was with regards to Crown land. Okay, we've got 90% of this Pacific Tourism Development Zone as Crown land. So we know that, you know, on one hand, that's kind of interesting and lots of potential, but on the other hand, obviously, there's a lot of management and how are we going to go about that? And I know that this isn't the first time you're thinking about. I know about the nodes and the other areas that the county's been, you know, looking at the potential for development. So we just have to understand that. So it's looking at everything within the region to say, okay, 90% of the area is Crown land. So what does that mean and how do we work with that? Another one, accommodation pressures. So what I mean by that is that we know Rocky Mountain House, lots of industry, which is great for the economy for Rocky Mountain House, but that also potentially means that a lot of the hotels could be busy and booked with those workers. And then the flip side being within Nordegg area, along that area, of course, there isn't as many fixed roof accommodations. Even the campgrounds in the summertime, you know, get busy and overbooked. So there is that compression. And a lot of it's diversity too. It's great when you can see a mix of accommodations as well, which helps with the different types of travelers that, you know, someone may want to camp. When we look at our international markets, most of them aren't bringing their camping gear and camping. A lot of them want a little more, you know, maybe the finer things, so to speak. They're not bringing, they want a nice place where they can lay their head at night. And everybody, you know, as travelers ourselves, we all know, you know, each of us individually like to travel differently, and we're looking for different things when we travel. And also I should mention, we should think about year-round as well. So of course some of the accommodation areas, especially out in the Nordegg west here, some of them aren't open year-round. So that brings in another challenge as well. So can we get some more year-round accommodation? And then communication, communication is going to be key. One of the areas specific we talk about is with the government and with the county. So what I mean by that is because of those Crown lands, we need to ensure further development or future development at all, we need to ensure that the government, whether it be, you know, the lands, the ministries, forestry, lands, environment, are all working together simultaneously with yourselves, with the county, to ensure we can move forward in a cohesive manner and be really engaging each other to make sure that it's for the best, however way it's approached. We want to ensure it's community-led so that the approach is that everyone feels comfortable with it and everyone sees that, yes, we feel like we're on the right track, we see the benefits, or we see this, you know, as a good thing for the area. And then we also did some resident engagement, and just here are some of the findings. So when we look at the resident engagement, we've got 66%. Looking at, sorry, I jumped ahead. Say that, sorry, I can't see it from the screen. No, that's okay, I don't have my glasses on. Getting to be that age. 66% said they would welcome more visitors to the community, okay? So this is, again, the residents, whether it be from Rocky Mountain House or I'll say the Nordegg area going west. So that's a number. We've got 75% say that tourism is important to our community, which is great. And then we've got 53% said a strong tourism industry improves my quality of life. So this is a very interesting one. And these numbers are pretty aligned with the other tourism development zones. I didn't see one that was really way off with regards to this development zone. They all, with regards to how does it improve my quality of life, were a little lower. And I think it's the way we ask the question and really not sure, like, what does that mean for me as a resident of Rocky Mountain House? So what we refer to that would be, let's say the beautiful boutiques you have. So can we encourage, maybe there's more little boutiques opening. Maybe there's a lovely restaurant that's going to be opening. Maybe it's a lodge that ends up opening, and the lodge is, you know, has a nice restaurant. It has maybe a spa there. That improves, that's what we mean by improving the quality of life. Okay, so some of the tourism, maybe there's a new bike park that opens up, or whatever it may be, that improves and helps with the quality of life, whether it be here in Rocky Mountain House, or maybe there's, for example, Black Mountain out by Nordegg. I know they're working on new trails for the mountain biking. Maybe I'm an enthusiast and I love that. As a resident, I'm thinking this is fantastic. I love this because I can go here versus maybe in the past I drove all the way to BC to some other mountains and bike paths. So that's what we meant by that. So I think the reason, my thoughts that the reason it might not be as high is because of that understanding of what really does that mean when we ask that question. So that's where, when we look at doing some further engagement, maybe that's somewhere where we talk to residents about that, and so that they have a further understanding of what this all means. And then, so we also looked at some of the strengths, some of the opportunities. And again, we had a list that we went through, but I'm just highlighting a few of the key ones. The strength being the diversity of year-round tourism experiences. There's some fantastic things to do here in Rocky Mountain House, and as we move west, lots of activities, lots of great things. And what's great is there's lots of potential for year-round, and that's not always the case. In some communities, it's driving people more for the summer months, but having that year-round activation, I think, is really great within the area. Challenges, again, that whole idea of that fixed roof diversity of accommodation is something that we can look at. Opportunities, and so this was something that the steering committee and the consultants all agreed on for this particular zone, was that the zone as one of Alberta's leading destinations for regenerative, nature-based adventure and ecotourism. And there was a strong agreement on the potential here was very great, because it's just such a wonderful area of the province, and lots of outdoor activities combined with some of the other things that we have going on in the area. So what are the next steps? So this is our big, moving forward, I should say, is we will be in the process of establishing another kind of an advisory committee. So it might not look exactly how the steering committee originally looked. So what we have is, out in the Nordegg area, there's a group made up primarily of businesses called Explore Nordegg, and you may be familiar with them. And then here in Rocky Mountain House, we've got Discover Rocky, which has been excellent development, having a lot of the key tourism businesses within Rocky Mountain House part of it. So what will happen, I see, is that we will take, some key people from each of those groups, and they will become that overarching advisory committee for this particular zone. But what's nice, when we do look at our action plans, and as I said, we're just in that infancy stage of starting to look and develop them, there will be definitely probably some things that will be more geared to Rocky Mountain House and more geared to Nordegg. So each of the groups individually can work on some of those specific actionable items, but then of course work together, because a lot of the actionable items will be coming out as part of the overall. So there'll be great collaboration between both of those groups. So these building blocks just talk about, the idea that we need that strong vision, we need that alignment, the collaboration, as I continue to say, we need to communicate and be talking with one another. Labor and housing, of course, is going to be, we know it's already a bit of a challenge. I hear could be a little bit of challenge here. I know it's definitely a challenge out in Nordegg organically because of the lack of housing within that Nordegg area, but of course there's also infrastructure, so we need to have a look at that. There is a staff housing plan that's being developed for the Nordegg area, just to see how they're going to address that, because it's catch-22. We want to attract more businesses, but if we don't have the proper housing for staff, we have to manage that and manage expectations as we go along. And then, of course, looking at the community engagement, as I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that, hopefully everybody's on board with this. But again, it's community-led, so we need to make sure we're talking to the community, we're talking to other stakeholders and businesses within the area, to ensure everybody's, on board and moving forward. So we want to make sure it's very open communication as we go along. So, and again, just to kind of reiterate some of the things we need to move forward and, that will help us move forward. The alignment on the vision. I'm stuck. No, there's two more, but that's okay. Let me just,
There you go.
oh, there we go. Clear communication, things that I've talked about, and the commitment, which will eventually appear. So again, some of those things that I've just reiterated on, that we continue with that. And that's it. So that, I just wanted to say thank you, and, well, there's a slide that says thank you, but I'll just say thank you. And this is, as I said, kind of a high level, just to give you a sense. I'd also like to mention that the actually Discovery report is now live on our industry website. So you can all, if you haven't seen it, you can download it there. Yeah, perfect. And as well, you can see some of the other zones. If you're curious and interested in seeing, I believe 9 of the 10 are all up there for your, for having a look and seeing what the other areas of the province are doing. I'd also mention that on February the 5th, I believe it is, we are also doing an engagement session with council, Clearwater County, as well as yourselves, as well as I'm sure there will be members from the advisory committee, other stakeholders involved, and that's the opportunity to just kind of, as I said, this is at its infancy stages. I mean, there's been lots and lots of work that's been put into getting us to here. But again, we're at that discovery stage, so now a big part of it will be opening the communication, making sure we're communicating with everybody, but looking at the action items that we want to look to move forward to really help guide us in the next, little chunks of time. So whether it be, here's 3 months what we'd like to do, here's 6 months in a year, some of the goals and things we'd like to achieve, and then also looking at, maybe other resources. Who do we need to bring in? Where do we need help with as the advisory committee moves forward with some of these initiatives? So, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and I think I'll open it to council to ask any questions. Councillor Hutchinson?
Thank you. I have no questions. I just wanted to say how fantastic this report was. I'm so interested in all of this and excited about it that I not only watched you here, but I watched you at the county meeting this morning too. So
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
it's just a fantastic report, and very, very excited to move forward on the big picture.
Yes.
Councillor Chappelle?
Thank you. First, my apologies for not shutting my cell phone off to all my fellow councillors. Secondly, I have a couple questions, and I agree totally with Councillor Hutchinson. It's a very comprehensive report. I do have a couple questions. Under visitation, it talks about mobile data. That's on page 18 here.
Yes.
And it appears that, I'm not sure what the word mobile data means.
Okay.
I think I have an understanding, but I'm not sure what that means.
So what we did was we set up some key areas, and this would be throughout the province within each zone, of where, we can kind of grab some of that data. So from a visitor. So as an example, the Rocky Mountain House National Historic Site was definitely one of the locations. So from that, we can pull data to see, how many people are coming from, where they're coming from, and lots of, we're being followed? No. where we are with our cell phone, and be able to, kind of extract some of that information that'll help us. We have a few key areas, but what we can do is that if we find there's we should have one here, and I'm not saying Rocky Mountain, the historic site is just one. I can't off the top of my head remember the other ones, but if there's, say, a key area that, for example, Jeff, you're saying, we should have one here, we don't have one, absolutely, then we can talk to our research team to get them to add more. And
Yeah.
Dana, maybe,
I'll just add as well that the gap in that, of course, with mobile data is when there's not cell reception. There may be travelers and people in locations that we simply can't identify. And also for clarity, I just want to underscore that this data is anonymized. So we are only tracking the numbers. It's not individual characteristics. But yeah, so it's mobile as in mobile cell phone, but yeah, there are gaps because of reception areas, which is another aspect of tourism that we're looking to get more clarity on through this project.
Thank you for the clarification. That's what I assumed it was.
yeah,
But I look at that because there are so many gaps. And the numbers, the percentage of local visitors from the province versus other visitors is high. And I wonder if that's possibly because people know where you can get cell coverage and people don't know where you can get cell coverage in that area.
could be.
So I really felt that, and a lot of the next page is all hinged on that data from mobile coverage. And so I just question that because I'm not sure how accurate that is, knowing how bad our mobile coverage is.
Yeah, and that's completely understandable. I
So-
think it's one aspect of many, and even, you know, even when you've got Michelle in the information center, I know they're great at tracking visitation when people stop in at the information center. That's another great tool to utilize and gather some research. Again, there's a lot of people that may not be stopping, so it's taking a bit of each of those things that we've got to use and understanding that they're not gonna be 100% correct.
Second question is, when you talk about accommodation, I would like to, Wilderness Village is a large facility, and I'd like to know where you have that in here, because it talks about campgrounds and cabins and bed and breakfast and all that kind of stuff. And Wilderness Village is, I'm not sure what, in all this stuff. Does it have any impact on how, I believe there's over 400 campsites out there.
Yeah.
So I just want to know where that fell in, when it talks about accommodations in the area. Well, where does it fall into?
Yeah, I believe it came under the campgrounds, but I know because that's more of a privately owned, I'd have to go back and check, to be honest, because I wanna, you know, whether it came as part of the numbers or not.
Yeah, I was just gonna clarify that, just,
Yeah,
I'm sure you're
because
familiar with
I'm
every
familiar with
campsite.
it, and because it is
our area.
privately owned and it's
Yeah.
membership driven, I believe,
Yeah,
I would need to go back in
'Cause there's
and
more
dive
of
a little
those-
deeper.
there's
Yeah.
more of those popping up in Clearwater County.
Yeah.
Um,
It would depend if it popped up on some of the, so some of those numbers came from the consultants in discussions with people like Jerry and Jeff, gathering it either through documents through, say, the GOA websites and what, you know, through the accommodation, Alberta, you know, Accommodation Association, some of those numbers, so it's looking at a couple of different areas to gather that information, so, that I would have to look to see if it was included or not.
I just wanted to touch base a little bit on First Nations. So when I participate in powwows and some of the other events that they have, are you getting that data from the people that are holding those events? And I'll just give you an example of why I'm asking such a specific question, because I think it's an opportunity that we're missing. For example, there was a round dance in Rocky Mountain House at the community center on whatever the Christmas Eve was, 23rd of December. And so I attended that, and those events draw visitors from a huge area that we're not even like connecting to. They're all, they all have names of places that aren't generally recognized by people who don't live on the nation. Because when they say, well, I'm from Frog Lake or I'm from so-and-so, I'm like, tell me the next closest city to where you're telling me you're from. And like there was like a drumming group. So that's my question, is that when you attend like the powwow, we'll get people from like Rocky Boy, Montana. We get them from New Mexico. Like we get them from all over North America, let alone just in Alberta. And so are you getting that data from the nations when they're holding events? Because they apply, because so the contestants, say like when you're doing a regalia, or if you're a drummer, they would have that list of where they're
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, not necessarily, and when I say that, that could be any event, right? So it depends on who's working with us and providing us with that data, if that makes sense. So, and as an example, we have an economic event calculator that we use with some of the larger events, and it's, you know, we can engage and work that with anybody who's holding events to gain insights, and exactly what you said, like a lot of the numbers and how many people stayed here and the accommodation and so forth. But unless they're working with us and talking to us about that, no, we don't necessarily have that data. But from an Indigenous perspective, we are working and we have engagement with the Indigenous groups and consultation in each of the zones. And that will be out, I believe,
In the
maybe Dana
spring.
can speak a bit more to that.
Yeah, so there's a ton of potential in Indigenous tourism across the province. It's really quite remarkable. And Indigenous Tourism Alberta is a partner of ours, and it's one of the fastest growing Indigenous tourism organizations in the country. So we see a ton of potential. But what we did concerning TDZ is we actually did that engagement by treaty. It made more sense than doing it by our predetermined TDZs. So we're really looking forward to sharing the results of that engagement in the spring. And there's, especially in this region, there's really a ton of potential, and we're really excited to progress through that and see how that, you know, further enhances the tourism of this zone.
Yeah,
Right.
because I certainly would like us to partner with our 3 First Nations that we have
Yes.
here, because they're the ones that are having the event, like the event. And it doesn't necessarily have to be chief and council or like the nation. It could be like a family or a group from our area that sponsors that event.
Yeah.
And
Well,
like
and-
we had a memorial bull riding, you know, and so anybody that was related to that person drove to that area, but it's not like a tourist thing. But it still is tourism.
Right, right. And I guess, you know, encouraging them to work, you know, with someone like Jeff that's working on, you know, promoting, marketing for the community, and likewise we will, the Rocky Mountain House National Historic Site has huge potential, and it tells the Indigenous story, and it's fantastic. So there's all those opportunities to work and with a lot of different groups as well. So yes, that's definitely part of our discovery as we move forward, for sure.
My second question is if we have people that we're talking to in the community that would like to be part of the process that maybe haven't been before because they are starting a new business, or they're from a group that maybe wasn't necessarily connected in a certain way, how should we tell them? Should we tell them to contact Michelle at the chamber? Should we have them contact Jeff at town council? Should they go to your website? Like, what's the best path?
It's almost a bit of all of that, because I was going to say as well as myself. So my role with Travel Alberta is working directly with industries and with communities. So I do get a lot of businesses that just might reach out to me as a tourism business that's brand new and opening, and what can we do, and what are the opportunities through Travel Alberta, so I can help guide them through that process. But then we've also got, we've got Michelle, that if they want to join the chamber, and Jeff to help them from the community. So I think between the 3 of us, so whether it be, you know, start with Jeff and Jeff introduces them to Michelle and myself, or it's interesting because I get introductions to a variety of, whether it be communities or businesses, through a variety of different ways. I've had both Jeff and Michelle, for example, do e-introductions to myself. So we all work together very well. So I guess, I don't know if that answers the question, but any one of us, and then from there, we all will connect with that person. So, great.
And are you planning to do an open house in our area so that just you could and
I think that would be an actionable item. And in my
Okay.
mind, I think that might be something that would be good, and that would be up to kind of the community to say, yes, we think this should be an actionable item. Do we want to do it all together? Or maybe we do one out here, you know, in Rocky Mountain House. Maybe there's a separate one in Nordig. I think that'll be up to the advisory group and to engage and kind of bring forth their suggestions on how they see that working. But absolutely, I think that would be a great idea.
yeah, I think that we could turn your, I don't know where I wrote it, your 55% to a higher number if
Yes.
they, you know, the
Fantastic,
numbers that you
yes.
said, like,
Yeah.
so like I sometimes feel that community engagement that you could improve, you know, like what does quality of life mean? Because really, if you generally, your first impression is that more tourists to our area doesn't help me and it's frustrating because of XYZ.
Right.
My favorite camping spot is
Yeah.
used.
Yes.
Whatever their negative idea is, if we could flip it around to say tourism, okay, so your favorite camping spot is, but it opens up all these other things that maybe you're not seeing.
Absolutely.
And so if we had some, like open houses, we could maybe get more
Yeah.
more
Yeah, you're bang on.
investment,
Right
I
track.
think.
Yes, absolutely, it's great. And it's only gonna be successful, with everybody being on board and everybody, as we always say, singing from the same songbook, so to speak, in the sense that we're all aligned, and yeah, that's great. If we can get some of those residents that are really keen on this and excited about it, it's just a better win.
I see that Councillor Phillips has thought of something before we end.
Yes, just the fact that we're now part of the David Thompson zone, I think that is a very smart decision. I know I was part of some of the earlier workshops where we were more in line with the Cochrane Sundering area. And not that we don't have synergies with them, but we have much more synergies with the Nordegg west of Rocky Mountain House area. So
Yeah,
I'm very happy to see that
Good.
that's more of the focus.
Yeah, and I think it would be a challenge or a lot of work to try and play double duty for each zone. Do you know what I mean? It's a lot of effort and so forth. So, and as I said, organically, they're going to connect. I'm sure.
I see that Councillor Auld also has a question or a comment.
I was just curious, have you guys partnered up with the Off-Road OHV Society in Alberta as well? I know there's a big group out here in Rocky that they're mapping trails and doing everything from here to the crossing almost. So have you guys been in
No,
touch with them? for
I
that?
haven't specifically, but I think it's a great idea. And where, from a tourism lens, not only when you think about, off-road vehicles, and this could be with anything with, the biking and so forth. What's interesting is if you can almost move the needle where now you might have these trails established so that people understand exactly where they are and what they can do, which is great. And then maybe to up at a level, maybe you've got people starting to provide visitors who've never been on an off-road vehicle and doing tours. And there's a couple of people I know out of Nordegg are looking at that. Or rentals, right? Or, so it kind of starts to elevate that tourism perspective where you've got, yes, people bringing their ATVs out, but now maybe you have a guy that's guiding people, that gets people excited that maybe it's an international traveler, they're not bringing their vehicle, or from another province, and maybe they've always wanted to do and try it. And then, as I said, rentals, and that goes with biking too. You could have somebody with the mountain biking, the trails, that someone's never tried it before, and now you've got somebody who will teach them and rent them a bike, and so it opens the opportunity to even more. Or do you have, accommodations that allow the ATVs to kind of pull up in front of them? Maybe there's accommodation right on the trail, and that brings up some new things too. Or maybe you've got restaurants, or I don't know, I'm just, thinking about those things. So yes, definitely, that'd be, all of those types of the different associations, I think it's great, if we have that communication with all of them as well.
Sure.
So if we know those leaders, those
Yeah,
leaders
send
in
them
our
on.
community,
Yep.
like the Tisdales and the Titfords, and they're all, running and managing those groups. Generally, most residents do that anyways. If someone's comes to town, they meet and they're forward and we immediately take them out and do tours on our own. So not as a business, but it would be nice to start that. So
Yeah, that'd be great.
so we could send those people to connect with, to say that they would like some input in the development
absolutely.
zone, and send them.
Send them
To
our
you?
way. Yeah, no, that's great.
Did you have a? Oh, sorry, wasn't sure if you were going for your light or not. So, okay, perfect. So then we will send them to Jeff or Michelle or yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't see any other questions or comments. So thank you so very much for coming and telling us all about the David Thompson Tourism Development Zone today. And make sure I get the language right.
Yeah. So much.
And I appreciate your time and your energy and your efforts for
Great.
improving our
Well,
community.
thanks to all of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're gonna move forward with the agenda today, and we're gonna go to 4.1, the adoption of the previous minutes. The last committee of the whole, which has now been changed to Governance and Priorities Committee, was on November 28th, 2023. And is there any comments about those minutes? So I'm looking for a motion. Counselor Caprero.
I'll make a motion to adopt the previous minutes of the committee of the whole meeting from November 28th, 2023.
Thank you very much. Seeing no questions or comments on that motion, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So the delegation business of 5.1. Does anybody, there was no ask, but I'm certainly looking forward to February 5th to participating in that, and then also forwarding those groups like Councillor Auld mentioned to, and our other community leaders to get involved. Would anybody like to make a motion? Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, if there's no further discussion, I'd just like to make a motion to accept item 5.1, the Travel Alberta delegation, as information.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So we have no old business today. So moving forward in the agenda, we have new business. And we go to 7.1, the RFD for Code of Conduct bylaw review. Mr. Kraus, did you want to do the introduction?
So, thank you, Mayor. So, at the organizational meeting, council reviewed the Code of Conduct bylaw and decided that council wanted a further, more in-depth conversation on possible revisions to the bylaw and asked the admin to bring it to a GPC meeting. So, here
Here
it
we
is
are.
for council's review.
Perfect. So on the comments, there's 3 sections, 16.1, 18.8, and 18.9 that we're going to review. Does anybody have anything else that they want to add to that? So I think we could go to 16.1. Who can file a complaint with the discussion of this being limited to a resident or ratepayer? Councillor Hutchinson?
I just wanted to start on the first page, or second page, I guess, first page of it. Where, and I don't know if you want to do that part first and then come back. We also had requested a discussion on leave of absence, so I don't know where you want to fit that.
So leave of absence is here after 18.8. There's nothing in here, but it kind of is mentioned.
Okay,
there.
I just wanted to clarify where we wanted to, where that was going in, so.
Yeah, so I was just going off the comments, but does everybody else want to start on page 1 and just go through? Is there a specific section that you wanted to make notes on, Councillor Hutchinson?
Yeah, I wanted to start with, so under the remuneration policy 006, 2018, under C,
So is that in this bylaw, or is that somewhere else?
it's in our RFD, request for decision.
Okay, so like we're looking at the bylaw. So what page in the bylaw? Or is this something you want added to the bylaw altogether?
Maybe Mr. Kraus could have some clarity, just how this was added on and into the,
So, yeah,
All right.
thank you. So, in the RFD, the comments are just comments that council made during the organizational meeting. They're not intended to focus council just on that, because council wanted a wholesome discussion.
Okay,
And council also talked about having a discussion on leave. So, it's a wide open conversation for council.
Okay.
I mean, these were just reminders. These are what you guys just discussed in the organizational meeting.
perfect. I was just trying to have an organized, like, so go ahead.
Okay, so on the second page of our, or the first page of the request for decision, staff had added under 1.2C, everybody know where I'm at? Yeah. So if a council member absent is greater than 8 weeks and requires an extension by council resolution per the Municipal Government Act, a second resolution will be required in order for a council member to retain their honorarium during the absence. So I had a few questions, comments. I've tried to dive into this a little bit deeper. There's not a lot anywhere on leaves of absence, but I feel that personally I struggled not knowing what our procedures were when a counselor takes a leave of absence. There's nothing under the MGA besides, pretty much what I just said there, or, the first part of it about the 8 weeks. I would like to see some type of additions under there, whether it be, like what circumstances do council feel would allow for a prolonged absence? Something along there that is there, a procedure in place? Do we follow what the town has in their HR policy for having evidence of, it doesn't, not specifics, but, if it's a medical leave, we follow this. Do we publicly announce a leave of absence? How do we go forward with things like any counselor having a town phone? Does that get forwarded to somebody? I just think that we need to look farther into it and maybe put something in writing.
So, Mr. Kraus, would that fall underneath our remuneration policy to have some of that in there? Or our procedures, council procedures policy? Or what we're currently looking at, which is the code of conduct bylaw?
I don't think it would go under policy, under the remuneration policy, because that's council's pay, and that's policy. So I think either into your code of conduct or procedural bylaw would work.
Okay, so
Probably more under the,
if we're discussing removing remuneration, it would go underneath that, right? And if we're discussing procedures of council members for a leave of absence, it would go under the procedural. So what would fit into code of conduct?
well, I think it'd be more of the code of conduct, actually thinking about it, because procedural bylaw is basically how you run your meetings. It's not really,
Okay,
under the conduct of council, I guess. So probably the code of conduct bylaw would be the most appropriate. That sets out procedures for absences.
okay, and so with that in mind, have you looked through the bylaw and thought about how, like recommendations of how you think it should be added to this bylaw?
A few, yeah, like I said, but there's discussion that needs to be had, and maybe it's something that we send back to administration to, if council agrees, to develop an addition to a bylaw stating what the procedure would be in the case of a leave of absence.
Okay, so like a whole nother like section
Yeah.
that needs to be added. So if we were to agree on that sounds reasonable. What type of ideas, because you're bringing this forward, what type of ideas do you think we need to have in that added section?
Where did I put my other page? It was funny because doing research, the majority of leaves were all pertaining to maternity or paternity. And that's another one that we had kind of discussed really briefly, that we do not have anything here. So if it would be acceptable to add a maternity and paternity policy, should I call it a policy? Section, I guess.
I think it would be a section once in a bylaw, correct, Mr. Kraus?
As well as a medical leave policy, and And the city of Saskatoon had done a municipal research, and they went through the provinces, what the MGA says. They went through they picked out, I think there was 5 municipalities in Alberta out of the whole study, and the majority of them just have the paternity and maternity. So if we find something, if we can establish something, like I said, Saskatoon put in an actual medical leave policy. That was the only one that I could find. I think it would even warrant going another step further and maybe putting a resolution through to Alberta municipalities on having more detailed clarity into the MGA on leaves of absence, because it's really hard to know the direction.
So there's a number of leaves of absence that, like, would also be pertaining to your topic. It would also be like a medical or health leave of absence if you had a minor surgery or a health issue, and that would include mental health issue, or the mayor of a neighboring community, for example, was on a leave of absence after her husband died, and it took some time to deal with her affairs. You know, those are sort of examples. There was people in another neighboring community that did a leave of absence because they were running for a political party to go into the next level higher. They were running for an MLA seat, and if successful, then they would resign off their council seat or continue forward, and they asked for a leave of absence for that. So do you think, just as a question going out there, that it would be, again, in a bylaw, or maybe we need a leave of absence policy where it's more fluid and we can adjust it without having to make it a bylaw, and just mention in the code of conduct bylaw, you know, reference, if this policy is not followed, then these are the next steps. How do you, and I'll go to Councillor Phillips next, but Councillor Hutchinson, I guess that's maybe a question of what do you feel, that, what direction, because, I mean, we should maybe not just look at one specific case, but do a nice job and look at all of the possibilities. Did you want me to go to Councillor Phillips next?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you. So, basically, I mean, this comes down to, you don't know you need something until you know you need something. So we've had the instance happen, now we know we need to have this in our, either our code of conduct bylaw, which it probably is the right place for it to be in, as opposed to our procedural bylaw, because as Mr. Kraus said, that's how we run our meetings. So, I think an extra section in our code of conduct bylaw that encompasses leave of absences is probably appropriate. Because there's so many different reasons, medical, you know, personal, like a family member dies or family member gets sick or an individual gets sick. We don't mention anything about maternity or paternity. It's just something that, like I said, until you know you need something in your bylaw, you don't know. And now we know we need it, so it's probably something that admin could put together and bring back to council for further discussion. And Councillor Hutchinson may have individual things she wants in that section, so.
So I always like to give administration some, you know, boundaries or some guidelines when we're asking them. So aside from the reasons we left, if we said that we would like a leave of absence section added to the code of conduct bylaw, and it would include maternity, paternity, mental health, family, I guess, compassionate leave for a death in the family, health issues. Do you think, I mean, like you said, we won't know what we're missing until something else comes up, but those would be the reasons for the leave of absence. Then we should put in the same time period as the MGA so that we're, right? Because we have to, let's be specific, you know, smart, measurable, achievable, time-related, you know, specific, realistic, right? So what else would we need in that policy? Direction for committees? Who looks after the committees? Direction for emails? What do you want in the policy? Like, what do you want administration to look at?
So,
Go ahead,
Yeah,
if you,
yep.
your light is on, so
Okay.
if
So
that's something that you want to
I
add to,
I
but,
kind of envision, it being a kind of a scenario where, okay, we have someone asking for a leave of absence, these are the steps that we take. The leave of absence has been asked for, do we announce it publicly, do we not announce it publicly, do we go for 8 weeks, and then after 8 weeks, we need a resolution to extend that beyond 8 weeks, as kind of that's what the MGA
So-
more determines.
yeah, so the MGA already has that laid out,
Yes,
right?
yep.
So the MGA's, has specifically laid out some of that stuff?
Yep.
So it would be, so what are you thinking? You're thinking outside of the MGA? So
Yeah,
what
just
would those
outside of,
things
outside of the
be?
MGA, like, when we have a leave asked for, is it something that we announce at the next council meeting? Is it something that we keep internal? Is it something that a public announcement is made? Just a policy of that effect, so that we know if this is asked, this is the next step. It comes to the next council meeting, or it goes to a public announcement, or however we deal with it, just so we have a set path forward.
So
of
you're
what we
looking
do.
for a procedure inside the bylaw. If someone takes a leave of absence, this is the procedure, so why don't we have a policy on that? Or do you still think it should be in the?
I still think this is the right place for
Okay.
it. It's just a separate section, like a separate subsection for
So
it.
do you have a list of, okay, so I see Councillor Hutchinson. Does that conclude your ideas? Councillor Hutchinson?
Thank you. It could be as simple as adopting what the town has in place right now for their leave of absence policy. It could echo that, maybe a few adjustments or tweaks to it, just so that there's some clarity, so that on a go-forward basis, and hopefully we don't have to deal with this again, but if a future council has to, then there's clarity on going forward. And Councillor Phillips had made a comment there about if a leave of absence is asked, that is covered in the MJ, because if it's asked, then you would do a resolution. If the ask isn't there, we don't know, the public is getting, and I hate that we have experienced the example, but the public is getting one thing and we're on the other side, not, again, just some clarity that would be really helpful. And again, hopefully we don't ever have to use it, but it would be nice to have something in place.
Mr. Kraus, I'm going to ask you if you have enough information to come up with a section as so far of what we've discussed. Because I think it's
Not-
rather vague.
Not totally clear. So what I'm thinking, if you're talking procedures about phone, email, and announcement, that probably belongs better in a policy. That's a procedure that we're following. It's not necessarily a bylaw. I don't know if you want to identify types of leave or not. If council does, what I think I would do is take the leaves that we have in our personnel policy for staff and bring that back in for council to discuss if that's appropriate for them. Because there's also leaves that are required under the employment code, for example, that are mandatory leaves that we have to give. And that's military service and all of that. And we could put that list together for council to go through to see if it's applicable for council and how you want to handle it.
So it's such a different situation being an elected official versus an employee. That's why the MGA has the rules and makes it fairly flexible so that it covers all situations. And so my feeling is that we're a little bit vague on the leave of absence. We have to follow the MGA, and if there's rules or things in place, it's a policy more so than it is in the bylaw. But if there's specific things for code of conduct in the bylaw that address leave of absence, then that's different. Do we want to think on it a little bit more, or do you want Mr. Kraus to come up with a policy about leave of absence and let us discuss that at a later time? Or Counselor Chappelle.
Your worship, if I could, I think we need to do it at policy. I think it's, there's so many moving tentacles in this thing, everything from pay, cell phones, emails, all that kind of stuff. It covers the whole gamut. And if we want to cover it all, then it makes more sense to put it in a policy rather than adding a book to our code of conduct bylaw. So I think it becomes, I think what we should do is direct Mr. Kroos into setting up a policy relative to this subject. And it's just going to be tentative to begin with, and it'll give us something to think about. It'll be a starting point. And I mean, we're not going to ace it off at the beginning, but it gives us all the opportunity to expand it or take away from it or do whatever. So I would think that it should be a policy. It can be referenced in terms of the code of conduct as our policy. But I think we should move forward with a policy versus an addition to a bylaw.
Does everyone feel comfortable with that suggestion? We can always review it and change our minds later. Mr. Kroos, does that make, do you have enough data to sort of look into a policy, comparing it to the employment policy and having those different leaves of absence included?
Yep, no, thank you, your worship. It's just a resolution directing admin to draft the policy. I think.
Your worship, I'll make that resolution if you'd allow me, and that resolution is to draft a policy regarding leave of absence.
For
and-
council members.
For council members. And I think we've discussed many different things here, so if we can try to capture that and add it to the policy for moving forward, and then bring it forward for further discussion. So the motion would be that we create that policy, have administration and create that policy.
And thank you very much. And so all in favor of that motion, if there's no further discussion? And that's carried. Now just, Mr. Kroos, is there any specific questions you want to ask before we leave that lie?
No, your worship, I think I.
You have enough?
Yep.
Thank you very much. So moving forward with this discussion, besides the three that are listed in our agenda package, is there something else? Do you want to go page by page and go through everything again? Or do we want to just tweak the three that we talked about back in October? Why don't we do those three first, and then if there's, Counselor Hutchinson, did you have other?
Yeah, I had other, but we can go through that first and then go back to the remuneration.
Well, I mean, give me a number and we can start there. A page number of the bylaw or
No,
a-
I said I wanted to go back to the remuneration policy again.
Okay, so you want to talk about the remuneration policy, not the code of conduct bylaw? We're talking about the code of conduct bylaw.
I said I could wait till after we do that and go back to this, yes, because it's in the RFD, so, for discussion.
Okay. So we're gonna move forward then with 18.8. If council is of the opinion that the complaint is frivolous, vexatious, or not made in good faith, council may reject the complaint. If council rejects the complaint, council should provide written notice to the complainant of council's decision. And then there was some discussion about if legal counsel is sought, and I'm assuming in the context of this, because I looked back to my notes, was if legal counsel is sought by council to the town's legal representation, and they recommend what council should do with the complainant. And the note is if we say legal counsel is sought, then we have to seek legal counsel every time we do 18.8. I'm just wondering if, based on our conversation from way back in October, if it could be 18.8A, if legal counsel is sought and recommendations considered, we can quote that in our letter to the complainant. Mr. Kroos, how do you feel about that? Would that make sense there?
Yeah, so your worship, I guess you could just add a sentence, council may seek legal counsel. Use the word may, and then it's not binding to council.
So I think that we should put that in there, that just a simple statement, council may seek legal legal advice on the complainant, because we've actually done that in the past. It doesn't say that, but we've actually done that. So I want to also put in there, legal advice for the council member should not be part of the discussion or provided by administration or the town lawyer. So like, if there's a code of conduct against council member Fred, Fred can't ascertain advice from our representative, the council's, the town's lawyer, or administration. They have to go, like they're supposed to, out and seek their own representation, because I think it's unfair to do that to ratepayers, if, you know, put that burden on our finances. So I'd like that added in 18.10 or 18.8. Okay, so when we receive a complainant, legal advice for the council member will not be part of the discussion, and the administration or the town lawyer is unable to provide legal advice to the council member that the complainant is, who's getting complained against. So if Fred has a complaint against him, the administration and the town lawyer will not be providing advice to the person that the code of conduct is against. It's a rule of thumb, but it's not written down in this bylaw. Council Phillips.
Sorry, just in regards to that matter, and this is the way I would read that scenario, is if we had the town lawyer brought in for a code of conduct complaint, that they would be prohibited to give advice to an individual council member, because they're representing the town, not that individual council member.
Correct, but in the
Right.
past, advice was given to the person that the code of conduct was put against. Did you want me to give you a specific example, or can you think of one on your own?
I can't think of one of my own, so.
It had to do with real estate.
I'm still drawing a blank, but.
Counselor Phillip, or sorry, Chappelle? Counselor Ald shut his light off.
Okay. I guess where I'm at is, if it's just not spelled out clearly in here, but
Yeah,
what it is,
that's
I think what you're looking for, if I understand you correctly, is if there's a code of conduct complaint coming in, council can get legal advice on it, but that legal advice should not be shared with ever who the code of conduct complaint is against. They need to seek their own legal advice, and the bylaw doesn't lay that out clearly. I think that's what I heard you say.
Correct,
Correct.
that's what I'm trying to
So,
say.
so in this case, if there's a code of conduct
Against
situation
Fred.
that occurs, we as a council can get that advice as to moving forward and all the rest of that, clear enough. But do we share the advice that we got with the other person? And you're saying no, and it's
Correct.
not spelled out in here.
Correct.
I'd ask Mr. Kraus if that makes sense, and if it is or isn't spelled out in the bylaw, and if it should be.
Because that's what our lawyer said during orientation, and it's
Correct.
just not clarified in here clear enough. Okay, so then I also have a note here that who is providing the documentation, like review of complaint by investigator, who provides documentation and background to the investigator? How can it be presented to ensure that it's not biased? And right now, our CAO is doing that, and are we fine with leaving it at that? Okay, so that's fine. Counselor Hutchinson?
Oh, I was just gonna say, we were the ones to determine who, you know, we have the choices of the investigators. It's not the choice, it's not just handed off to the CAO to give, it's a council decision.
So in a scenario where there's a problem or a conflict between somebody in administration and the person then, you know, the CEO would give the information to the investigator and lay out the background of the information. I'm just saying, is that how we want to keep going? Counselor Chappelle.
I think you could have, in a code of conduct complaint, you can have that indirect concern with pretty much everyone. Is there a, you know, an underlying, I'm not happy with what's going on, I'm mad, I'm whatever. If you bring in a third party to negotiate that, or say, you know, right now we have it set up as administration, or Mr. Crowe's doing that, I have no problem with that, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we as council have hammer on that. So, you know, and we just have to separate the chaff from the wheat, and know that the decision we make is on the appropriate information that's given to us. So, I have no problem moving ahead with that. I do want to go back to my last discussion, because I had intended for Mr. Crowe to reply, if I could, Your Worship, in regards to your comment for legal counsel and their involvement with, indirectly with a third party who the complainant is against. So directly with counsel, that's okay, but the complainant not. And I just wanted to ask Mr. Krause if it's covered in our bylaw presently, or if it needs to be added to our bylaw. I just want to be clear that if it's not in the bylaw, it should be added. And so I'm just looking for that direction.
For which part?
That's to do with legal counsel. We as a council can get legal advice regarding a code of conduct. That legal advice can't be shared with whomever the complaint is against. It's up to them to get their own legal advice. Mr. Kraus.
I believe that is in here, but what I'm hearing from council is just want clarification that the complainant, if it is a council member, or the respondent, must seek their own legal advice, and the town's legal advice would not be privy to them. That's basically what we're saying. I think.
Correct.
Am I, okay.
So we'll wait till that comes back and see what that looks like. I got out of order here. 16, I have it here in the comments. Who can file a complaint? Now, this was discussed because limited to a resident or ratepayer, to make sure that it's somebody locally, or, you know, this was part of the discussion if someone was from some, I know they're having a lot of problems in other communities where they have groups from Calgary coming in to their meeting and being disruptive and causing troubles. I know like Penhold's having problems. So it says on 16.1, because I went back to our notes from October, and it said, I have written down here, limited to a resident or ratepayer of Rocky Mountain House. But right now, it reads 16.1, any individual who has witnessed or experienced conduct by a member which they believe to be in contravene of this code of conduct bylaw may submit a complaint in accordance with this bylaw. The complainant may be a member of the public or a member of administration or another member. So we could put in there a member of the public that is a resident or ratepayer, a member of administration. Or do you want to leave it as it is? That's what the discussion is. Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I just kind of like it left the way it is, just for the sake that perhaps it's at Alberta Municipalities Conference, or, you know, Lake Louise or something like that. I mean, it would have to be a pretty major event to have happened, but it should have that open to anybody that sees something that isn't acceptable.
Anybody else have any comments? So I feel that we're going to leave it the way it is. So that finishes that. So then that's all the things that I had on our notes to talk about specifically in the code of conduct. Aside from, did you want to have administration bring back the remuneration policy, Counselor Hutchinson, and discuss that at a future meeting?
I guess I would ask Mr. Kraus, just because it is in the RFD, adding the section about a second resolution. Would we want that to be brought back? I would, where I'm going with this is that I would like to have something added to that policy.
The remuneration policy?
Yeah. Do we want to bring it back, or is that something that can be discussed now?
Well, it can't be discussed now because it's not on the agenda, but we could bring it back to a future meeting. Is there something that you would like administration to look at to bring it back to a future meeting for remuneration? He's quoting remuneration in here because, I mean, this is the other policies that would affect talking about remuneration in the Code of Conduct bylaw, not that we're talking about remuneration today.
Then was just the question I was asking. Is it something that, do we bring back?
Yes. Well, I'll let Mr. Kraus answer that.
I question that only because this pertains to the last couple months, and our payroll cutoff would be the 15th if there was any adjustments to be made. So maybe I should have
We
added
can't.
it prior to the start of the meeting. I should have added it, but I understood this as we were discussing the remuneration policy because of the RFD. So that was my mistake.
Mr. Kraus, can we bring back the remuneration policy to a future meeting so we can have it added in?
Your worship, or you can have a discussion. You've asked admin to draft a policy on the procedures of absences, so is this part of that policy when remuneration is affected by these procedures? So I think you can have this discussion and we can provide clarity to the policy that council wants drafted.
Okay, but wouldn't it have to stay in the remuneration policy if you wanted to say not pay someone while they're on a leave of absence?
The two policies would tie together. But I think if it's under a procedure, it would go into the policy that council draft or asked for.
Okay, so Councillor Hutchison, what he's saying is if you want something added to the leave of absence policy, tell him now and he'll fix the other policy when he brings it back to us.
Okay, I would like to see something included in it that has compensation for a deputy mayor if filling an extended leave. And I didn't want to get this specific.
Well, we need to know what's in the policy so they can bring it back.
So I feel that the deputy mayor should be compensated for the time that she has put in as mayor, fulfilling the duties of the mayor in the absence of the mayor. So the reason I brought that up now is because, like I said, the remuneration has to be finalized by the 15th, according to our payroll and whatnot. So again, my mistake, maybe it should have been brought up as an addition to the agenda.
Is there anything else you want to add to the policy? Because you can't go back and change what's already happened.
To add some clause, something in there that in an extended absence, and it would only be in pertaining to the mayor's leave, that the deputy mayor be compensated. And I don't know what that looks like. That would be something that we need some research done on it.
And did you want to discuss anything else? Because he's making notes there.
Your worship, so just for clarification, for the leave of absence policy, does council want like the honorarium is suspended or carried through, or is that just for me to draft for council's review?
So if a person is on leave of absence, do you want to say they don't get paid?
I think we could look at what, again, the town's HR policy is, what the.
I think that's a yes. Councillor Chappelle.
No, I have another item I want to discuss.
Okay, are you happy with those changes for remuneration, Councillor Hutchinson, before we go to a different item? yes. Counselor Chappelle.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could, this is about 13.1. 13.1 talks about orientation training offered by the municipality within 90 days. And I know we have a by-election coming up. I'm trying to recall if I myself got the orientation training. When I read that, I thought, holy crap, maybe I go to jail here
You
soon.
took the Munis 101.
Where did I take that at?
You took that online in January, or you were supposed to, because I know Dave took it. You haven't taken it yet?
No, I have not taken Muni 101. So that was my question, is what does the word orientation training mean? Does it mean taking Muni 101? Because I recall Councillor All saying that way back when I first started, where there was a discussion about that. But the bylaw doesn't say 101. And so I look at this, and the question in my mind is, am I incorrectly sitting here because I haven't done what I was supposed to do and I'm not sure if I am or ain't, or go to jail, or what the heck goes on? So I'm just looking for clarification.
Yeah, so Your Worship, for clarification, council actually has a training policy, which references Muni 101 or equivalent as council determines. So that training for yourself, Councillor Shippold, was when we had Ms. Stewart Palmer in here provide that orientation to you. So that meets the requirements of the MGA and the policy.
So yeah, you're good.
Thank you. I was a little panicky there because I read that and I wasn't sure what it meant. And it wasn't clear in what you had to take, and so I'm thinking, yeah, I hope I did something right, but wasn't sure. So thank you for that clarification.
And just for council's information, we've already scheduled an orientation with legal counsel for this by-election. So we'll be sending out dates if all of council wants to attend and refresh.
So, with the Code of Conduct bylaw, is there anything else anybody else wants to discuss? So in summary, Mr. Kroos, just compare my notes to your notes. The only thing that's gonna change that we've discussed is on 18.8 about adding a sentence about legal counsel may be sought, and putting somewhere in there about legal advice for the person the code of conduct is against, whatever that person's called, is not to be shared, or whatever. That's the only two things. Does that sound, is there anything else that anybody wants to discuss about the code of conduct? I see everyone's shaking their head for no, so I think we can move on to 7.2. Does that sound fair? Okay. So, Counselor Phillips.
I was just gonna make a motion to direct administration to revise the code of conduct bylaw with the amendments discussed today and bring it back to a future council meeting.
Any
Just for clarification, council or GPC?
Can we do it at a council meeting, or could we do
Can we
it at a
just do
GPC meeting?
a ru-
Are
we can do
allowed
it-
to-
I mean, it's,
We could do it as a rise and report, right? And just
Yeah.
go right to a council meeting? And then not have to do this and then go to a council meeting if there's a
That's why I was,
change?
that's why I
Okay.
was saying to a
No,
council
just
meeting.
clarification.
Then we can just deal with it at the council meeting as opposed to dealing with it and having to rise and report.
So
so,
he'd like to rise and report to a council meeting the changes as described. Right? So we don't have to come back to here?
Yes, exactly.
All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So 7.2 is the Town of Rocky Mountain House Awards Program Policy. And Mr. Kraus, did you want to give an outline, or did you want?
Your Worship, so Ms. Breeze drafted this, so I don't know if she wants to put the highlights in the draft.
Thank you, Your Worship, Mr. Kraus. So feedback was given from council, I believe at a committee of the whole meeting last October, to add and clarify a few different extra awards and to kind of clean up and merge. And we didn't actually have a policy for the town awards. We just had a policy for the Martha Cossack award. Excuse that if I misread that name. So before you is the award policy. So feel free to eliminate anything that doesn't agree with council's strategic plan, or if you want to have any additional awards added. Again, it's feedback from council, and I look forward to hearing what council has to say and any feedback you have.
Seeing as nobody has their light on, I thank you for doing this. While everybody gets organized, thank you for doing this. And I'm just wondering, the town of Sylvan Lake has a similar awards program, and they actually call it Citizen of the Year Award, even though they give it out to like a number of different citizens. And I'm just wondering if council feels that that would be a nice title rather than Mayor's Award or Council Award, that we do Citizen of the Year Award. And then I just thought that would be a nice title, and then we could still keep the categories. Just to get us all sort of like thinking positive thoughts. Councillor Chappelle, do you want to say something?
I agree with you. I think that name change is good. I just have a couple questions regarding the bylaw, if I could firstly.
The policy.
The policy, a distinguished voluntary service. And I'm just wondering if it should be, it talks about an individual, but I'm wondering if it should be, or group, if it should involve both a citizen and or a group. Gives us that opportunity if we have several groups applying. One can get long-term contribution award. The other one could be distinguished voluntary services. So I'm just wondering if we should change that distinguished voluntary service to include not only a citizen, but a group as well.
So when I like that. I like that. I printed off Sylvan Lakes because they said recognizing residents of outstanding achievements or contributions that have improved quality of life for others. They may include community service, citizenship, active heroism or bravery, and volunteering. They kind of grouped it all sort of together as citizenship, almost like what you do in school, right? You have a good citizenship award for people who are like have. So do you like that idea?
Could work.
And then put in citizen or group?
That could work.
Under citizenship?
Yep.
Because it would be, like it says, community service, citizenship, active heroism or bravery, and volunteering. Contributions that have improved the quality of life for others. Sort of like clarifies, right? That way we don't have blanks in, like if someone doesn't, or just change it under distinguished voluntary service.
I think it could be either or, your worship. I like the change, though the change makes it broader.
The citizenship
Yes.
rather than distinguished voluntary service. Councillor Phillips is,
Yeah, just a clarification question. So is that just for the one designation, or would that be allowing groups for all of the designations?
Just for the one.
Just for the one, okay.
see, on athletics ward, it does say groups. So you could have like I'm gonna just, like the Rocky Rams,
Yeah.
whatever, coaching or whatever organizational staff would be under the athletic words. Or maybe the soccer group, what are they called? Rocky Knights Soccer Group? Or, you know what I mean? Because they're volunteer board members, right? It says groups right there. So for fine and performing arts, would you do groups as well? That's on page 4 of 9. In Schedule A. Counselor Hutchinson, did you have ideas on this?
Do we have too many words?
Yeah.
Because some of these are overlapping as I just read through this, and I go like, maybe we need to cut back some, because we do have the Special Achievement Award, the Distinguished Volunteer Award, Long-Term Contribution Award, all of them are pretty much, could be lumped under one.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. Like when I
Yeah.
printed off citizen, I thought citizenship could be distinguished voluntary service, civic award for youth volunteers, we just open it up to units. Community builder, long-term contribution award, and special achievement award could all be citizenship.
Yep, I agree. There's 10 here now, so I would cut it back to 6.
And then athletics, we could be, yeah, athletics, Sylvan Lake uses sports excellence. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be an Olympian. It could be that you've volunteered or you're always the water boy, or, you know, like you could volunteer someone who like helps with a team.
So to move
Or
this
whatever.
forward,
Yeah,
can I make this suggestion that we aim at 5 or 6 awards from the community? The Chamber's putting out awards, the county's putting out awards. Let's tidy this up and not go on for that night for a whole hours and hours. Let's make it fast and easy and cut it back to 5 or 6 awards.
Counselor Phillips?
I do like that idea of narrowing it down our criteria or our
Category.
award categories. It means more if we're giving out less. If we give out too many awards, all of a sudden it becomes watered down and it doesn't mean as much. So I definitely agree that sometimes less is better.
And I see that we have best business, accessible business awards. Just wondering if that should be left to the chamber, because that's a chamber award, right? Business awards. And I like, Tracy did a great job. I like Sylvan Lakes Award because I needed a comparison of what another community does. Instead of fine and performing arts, if we could go music, art, culture, and heritage, because then we could give awards for, you know, like somebody in the Filipino community or somebody in the Japanese community, you know, like different things that, you know, have heritage, somebody First Nations that's done a lot of work in our community. It would encompass all of that. It wouldn't make a category, it just makes the category bigger. Your light is on, Counselor Chappelle, too.
I have a question. I have a question that precedes this discussion, actually. And that had to do with budgeting, and we didn't have a number that met the Rocky Chamber of Commerce number when it came to budgeting for this function. We're doing all this, and it's all tied to a function that they put on. But my last understanding is that we had not come to an understanding as to what our cost would be compared to what was requested. And I just want to know if, in fact, we've got that under control prior to us spending a whole bunch of energy. In fact, if we're not a willing participant in this program.
So I can answer that, Your Worship, to Councillor Shippold. I have reached out to Michelle, and she is supposed to get a budget with basically cost by the end of the week, because it's going to her meeting as well. So they do figure it's going to be about the same as last year, maybe a tiny bit more. So I believe what council has budgeted in should be encompass it all. So she's very aware of the conscientiousness of council in the budget process.
Okay, so in our policy, if everybody looks, we kind of have our categories sort of like adjusted a little bit, so we've narrowed it down to maybe 5 categories or something like that, because we have the Martha Kostyuk, athletics, performing arts, and citizenship. Do we want a specific one for youth? Because then that would be the 5, right? Athletics, fine and performing arts, youth, like Youth Citizen Award or Youth Award of Excellence? Does that sound, what does, Counselor Phillips?
I think anytime we can exemplary or put a youth out there and show the community that a youth has done a good job, I think that's well worth the recognition, so I would be in support of having a youth award for sure.
Counselor Caprero?
I agree wholeheartedly with what Councillor Phillips said. I think it's important to keep that one there too for our youth.
So if we went back to the 5, they would be athletics or sports excellence, fine performing arts, and we could go music, art, and culture and heritage instead of just fine arts. Citizenship, youth citizenship, or youth excellence. And then the Martha Kostyuk, which is the environmental one, that gives us 5. However we describe them, rather than, or like, just shortens our list a little bit. Does everybody feel comfortable with that? Dale, you're shaking your head. No, Councillor Shipwell, you're saying no. Okay.
No, I think we need to go to 6.
Okay, what's
Uh,
the 6th
A Special Achievement Award,
special achievement?
which could encompass a whole bunch of stuff there. But the ones where don't have a name to are all, could be encompassed in that. Community builder, long-term contribution, special achievement, best in business, accessible, that could all
Okay,
be in there. So that'd be 6 awards.
6. Miss Breeze does, okay, just want to make sure, because so special messages and greetings, long-standing business recognition, anniversary, and birthday messages. And then I put grand openings on there, right? Because we do get invited to grand openings, and it would be sort of part of this whole sort of like policy, because we could do some sort of a certificate or a ribbon or whatever type thing. So then that would be, when they do it, when they have something, they say it has to be, nope, I must have seen it somewhere else, but for the greetings, you have to give us enough notice to be prepared for that, right? So if it's somebody's 80th birthday, we can have just a simple card that all of town council signs, or something like that. Oh, sorry, it's on the very last page. So maybe, I'm sorry, let me go. The nominations, everybody's happy with the nomination, and then the selection committee, and the awards, and the eligibility, and the award criteria. That page, everybody's happy with that page. That's page 2 of 9 in the policy. And then, so special messages and greetings, that would be page 3 of 9. And it should just be something simple, like, you know how we do it at the foundation, where we pass around a card and say, thank you very much. We just say, happy 80th birthday from town council. If we're told, usually somebody's family member will say, it's my auntie's 100th birthday, right? Or whatever. And then, do we need the long-standing business recognition, or is that a chamber thing? Councillor Caprero and then Councillor Hutchinson.
I'd like to keep that in there just to show too that the town appreciates the businesses that we have in town. So something like that with recognition for our business, I think, is important.
So it could just be like a certificate that we give. It doesn't have to be an award at the awards event. It could be just like, oh, I got one from, I think, Nixon. Councillor Hutchinson?
Thank you. I believe when we decided to add the anniversary and birthday messages, and it says it under the anniversary one, that just congratulatory letters from council. So when we talked about the long-standing business recognition, like Councillor Clapero said, to recognize those businesses and that the town appreciates what they did. I think I had even mentioned going a little bit further, And if we decided to have some type of, but that gets into a little bit complication there, putting plaques and things like that, you know, I saw that in another municipality where, you know, 50 years of business on the outside of their store. But this would be the starting point, and that would be something probably service level discussion, because it would have to do with money.
Yeah, we could build on this.
Yeah.
We could build on this. So, on long-standing business recognition, would we go, instead of 20, 30, 40, 50, would we go 25, 50, 75? Would we do it in 25s? It's got 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. Or would we do 25, 50, 75? Counselor Chappelle.
Your worship, I'd be okay with the way it is.
Okay. Counselor Hutchinson.
I would almost like to add a 10-year, just because of, I'm gonna say Copper Creek just had their 10th year, and for a restaurant, that's an accomplishment, Dale, you would know that too. So I would like to add 10-year as well, and if it's just a letter being sent out, then it's pretty much no cost to the town.
So for us to keep track of that, is it through business licensing? Then we're gonna start keeping track of how long they've had a business license, or
No.
do people apply for this?
People apply, your worship. That's the way the policy is written.
Okay. Right, because then completed forms, request forms. I know it's not on here, but I wonder if we could just do, because we're doing recognition awards, I wonder if we could just recognize, without making it at a big thing, just even in, just in council, the years of work that counselors have done. For example, like Counselor Phillips has been on more than one term. Counselor, if you add up all your different terms all over the place, you know, like if we did 10-year, 20-year, something like that, counts. Mr. Kraus.
Your worship, we do have a policy for that, for council and board members.
Yeah, but it's like by a tree, right?
Um,
Because last year we gave an award to Mayor Burke, and like all Sylvan Lake does is recognize that they've done it for 10 years, just like we do staff and town employees. That's all they did. They just said, you've been on council for 10 years.
Yeah, and we do have a separate policy for that, so we could bring that policy back if council wants to amend it versus this policy,
Oh, okay.
right? Yeah, and I think the award for Mayor Burke last year, it was an environmental award, I think.
Right.
It wasn't for her service on, long service on council. So.
Right. Okay, so I'm fine with this. Does anybody have anything else to say or add or change to maybe any of the Schedule As? They'll be redone because we're combining a couple of the headers, right? So athletic awards, it says groups in there, right? Where's the youth one at? Youth award, somebody under the age of 24. Are we happy with that description of youth? Is there anything we want to discuss in this policy then? No? We're happy with the way it is? Yes? Okay, so would somebody like to make a motion? Counselor Chappelle.
I'll say that we make a motion to the awards, whatever it's called.
Policy.
Awards policy to make the changes that we've suggested. And do we have to bring it back?
We could do,
We bring it back January 16th to the next meeting.
so that's a rise and report, correct?
Yes. Rise report.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So I think now would be appropriate to have a 10-minute recess. That sound fair? Yes. We'll break for 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the Town of Rocky Mountain House Governance and Priorities Committee meeting for January 9th of 2024. We are currently on 7.3, tax relief policy discussion. Mr. Kraus, did you want to do the opening for that?
Yeah, so thank you, Your Worship. So council has asked administration to draft a tax relief policy as a result of a residential fire for citizens. Hopefully we hit the mark here with the intent, but I can go through it because there are some questions here for council. So under section 1 is the policy purpose. Really, it just identifies a section of the MGA where council is allowed to defer or waive or council taxes, and it's specific to residential property owners. So it defines it right in the first paragraph. And then in section 2 is the policy statements, which really provides the reason why council would be doing this. And this draft policy is based on compassionate reasons. So council's recognizing a homeowner has experienced something fairly traumatic in losing their house. So for compassionate reasons, council would be waiving the property taxes for the year of the fire. Section 3 is just the definitions. I think this is where administration is starting to explore where council wants to go, because we define residential properties. We did put in manufactured homes, single-family dwelling, or duplex, and it's actually owned and occupied by the same individuals. Then the question comes out now: how does this apply to a condominium type of thing, and is that included in it? And how far it goes. So I think Councillor Schippelt has his light on, Your Worship.
Councillor Chappell.
Your Worship, if I could, to Mr. Kraus. Under definitions, number 3, the part you just referred to, where residential property means a manufactured home, single-family dwelling, or duplex, I think the next part of that statement, the part that says that is owned and occupied by the property owner, can be crossed out because it's covered off in the first. Because if you have a house and you have a tenant in there and it burns down, so I just think that the words "has to be occupied by the owner" can be taken out, because if you own a house and it gets burnt down, right, you're looking, to me, the notion of the whole thing is just to reduce financial burdens and hardships on families. So I just think that last little phrase under that section can get crossed out, because it's a duplication of what it says above, basically.
Okay.
And I feel fine that it doesn't include condominiums, but maybe it could have a fourplex, or I'm thinking those lay bond walk-ups, but I don't know what it would be on here, because they are not a single-family dwelling or a duplex. They are you know what I mean? I don't know what the proper,
I think we're
they're
talking.
not a condo,
yeah.
though. They would be like,
I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on it, because
No.
if we're lucky, I'm hoping and praying to only get one every 5 years. There might be more often than that. I mean, it's a negative, and I think for me, it's down the road, we can always revise it. At this point, it's a starting point, so I think that if it just talks about residential homes, it's a good stepping stone.
yep,
Because you get really carried away. I mean, if it's a natural disaster, then 9 times out of 10, it's covered off by the province, or the province steps in. So I think in this case, we're talking single-family residences, basically.
Mr. Crowstuds.
Okay.
I think that's good on
Council-
definitions then.
Okay, so, section 4 is just outlining the responsibilities. So under the MGA, it's up to council to do it. They can't delegate it down, so it just clarifies that. Section 5 is the guidelines. This is where administration struggled a bit, is defining when it kicks in and when it doesn't. So the definition that was put in there is destroyed by fire to the extent of more than 75% of the value of the property. We just borrowed that from the MGA. That's the terminology in the MGA is used for a non-conforming building, for it to be built. So I'll leave that for council's discussion, so.
Your worship, if I could.
Yep, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
thought he
Kraus.
was, I didn't know he
Yeah,
was done
so
talking.
I circled that because I thought it's more if the house is inhabitable versus to what percentage, who's going to determine what 75% is or 50% or whatever. It's either inhabitable or not. I mean, and in this case, if it's uninhabitable, then I think that's where the terminology could change rather than putting a specific number in there. I mean, if it doesn't have a roof left on it, you know, it may be considered 50% burnt, but still uninhabitable. So I'm just wondering if we can,
Do you want to add uninhabitable in there?
I don't think we should put a number of 75%, because how do you determine that? I think it's either, you can either live in it or you can't live in it. So if you can't live in it, then it's uninhabitable, and then at that point, that's when it should kick in.
But do you want to change, do you want to clarify? Because maybe you just had a little fire in your kitchen,
Then you don't get it.
right? But so do you want to put to the extent that it's not inhabitable?
Well,
You know why I'm asking, right?
I know exactly why you're asking, because if you had a fire in your kitchen and you couldn't live in your house, but it was,
But then in 2 months it's fixed.
yeah, would you get and you shouldn't get a tax reduction for that.
Right, but people are gonna apply.
So maybe it does have to say 50% and or uninhabitable. No, I don't know.
I think in our comments, we're just looking, if you go with the uninhabitable type of clause, like, for what period of time? Is it, if it's uninhabitable for 4 months, then you can apply, but if it's less than 5 months, there has to be some criteria for council to determine when to do this, so.
See, in Parkland County, they say when a property improvement is completely destroyed by fire or deemed to be no longer inhabitable due to fire. That's exactly the wording that they use, so do we want to put that in there instead of 75% the value? Do you like that terminology better?
Could we just use permanently uninhabitable? Once it becomes permanently uninhabitable, then this kicks in.
Well, I like this statement, because I was thinking this around the same lines, because you're gonna get somebody who's got like a barbecue on their deck fire, or, you know, like, so I think because the idea is that their house burnt down, right? Or if they burnt down so that they have to knock it down, because that's the problem in the Les Bon one, right? Like, it was. So what about if we put, when a property improvement is completely destroyed by fire or deemed to be no longer inhabitable due to fire? Because later on, I thought to add that date confirmed by fire service is one of our things. That's what somebody else wrote. That the fire department says, oh yeah, it happened on this date, and you have a confirmation letter from the fire department.
I actually like Councillor Phillips's comments more than that, because I think that still leaves some openness to it.
Okay.
Councillor Phillips doesn't, it has a period at the end of it, and that's what I
Okay.
think makes more sense.
Can you say that one again, Councillor Phillips?
When a structure becomes permanently uninhabitable, that means there's no one's gonna go back in there and live in it. It's permanently uninhabitable.
So, but instead of permanently, it's, yeah, I see, when it says no longer, it doesn't, you could fix it and then move back in. Yeah. So permanently uninhabitable instead of 70, so do you want to put, it's completely destroyed by fire or permanently uninhabitable due to fire?
I think if it's permanently uninhabitable, it doesn't matter whether it's a total loss of the building or not, it's permanently uninhabitable. I think that covers. the matter.
Completely, you
Yeah.
think it covers completely destroyed?
Yes, for sure. If it's-
Okay.
yeah.
So section 5.2, we have questions on two. I know the request that council has received, it was prorated from when the fire occurred. And that's the way we drafted the policy, but in consideration, if council's doing it for compassionate reasons, that doesn't really seem to work or make sense. So if your house burned down in February, you'd get pretty much the whole year of taxes, but if it burnt down in September, you'd only get 3 months. So looking for council's direction on this.
I think that's fair and equitable to do it from the time of the fire happening, because in January, we reassess, and you don't get your tax notice until later on that year, and it'll be reassessed at, if it's completely gone or uninhabitable, it'll be reassessed at only the land value.
Yeah, so your worship, but I guess council's got to ask, why are you doing this? And if it's for compassion reasons, a fire is still a fire regardless of the time of year. The policy does say it only applies to the year of the fire for your taxation, so the assessment would be redone at the end of that year anyway, and you would, for the following year, you'd be just reassessed for the lot. So I guess that's where administration is coming from.
Councillor Hutchinson?
I just wanted to say that I'm not in favor at all of this policy, for the reasons being just the conversations we're having, how to define it. What is fair and equitable? Why would a house, say this house burnt down, they get the tax relief, the neighbor has gone through as much, maybe even more stress and whatnot involved in his house being damaged 3/4 or 50% underneath that. So how do you make it fair and equitable for everybody? I just feel that there's too many variables, and I don't think this can of worms should even be opened up to have a policy on tax relief for fire. It is covered in the MGA, or it has been stated that insurance, the town taxes are the first payout on insurance. I just think that it's opening us up to too many variables. What about businesses? Your business burns to the ground. That loss can be as traumatizing to somebody who loses their house. That might have been their life savings in it. So you can't encompass every building, or I guess we can, but there's too many, and I don't feel that it can be fair and equitable to the entire community.
Thank you very much for your comments. I think we should still proceed if everybody else is in agreement. There's 3 of us. Councillor Phillips, did you want to proceed with discussing this policy?
I think we can proceed in discussing it for sure.
Okay.
One thing I would like to see in our policy, though, is if someone's insurance covers the fact that their house is destroyed, and their insurance covers the fact that their taxes are taken care of, that is not applicable. That if insurance pays for that, then the town won't pay for it.
Do you have an answer to
I
that?
do.
Yeah.
So I talked to my insurance company, the cooperators, and I also talked to Sims, whatever they're called now. And in both cases, the agent said they do not cover taxes. So what happens if your house is worth $300,000, you get a check for $300,000. It's your responsibility to pay the taxes. That comes right out of the value of what they've determined your house is. So in essence, you lose the money for the tax component or portion.
Of the land use improvements, not
Of the
land.
improvement, that's correct. So although it says that in the Municipal Government Act, yes, if you get money from the insurance company, you get the proceeds of what the value of your improvement is, then you have to pay the taxes out of that. They don't say 300,000 plus taxes. It's 300,000, you take the taxes out of that. So, and that's what the Municipal Government Act is directing. You have to pay your taxes out of your proceeds from your sale. Too bad for you if it's direct out of your pocket. So it's sort of misleading in the Municipal Government Act what it says there. Now, to that, I think in this case we're talking about residential homes. And, you know, yes, you could get it carried away into many other things and make it more broad. I think that in reading the other 4 bylaws that we've been presented, they all pretty much have what we have here. And I totally agree with what Mr. Kraus has wrote here, that it's all prorated. Is that fair or not? I think it's fair because it's from the day you lose your property is the day that you don't pay taxes on it, basically. it doesn't mean that, you know, if I lose my house in January and my neighbor's is in, you know, September, hey, he's got the luxury of living in that house, and so he should be paying taxes. So I think that the argument of, hey, it's not fair, how do you compensate? I think it's a play on words here, but I think the fairness is that the taxes are, relief is from the day you lose your property. And I think the big thing is, it's just compassion for the people and not giving them a further financial burden than what's going on. And I think the bylaw that's been presented here really covers that off. And I don't think it needs a lot of tweaking. I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of what it's trying to accomplish. And I think I have no problem with it. I think it's something we can use. Is it 100% perfect? I don't think any bylaw we have is 100% perfect. We spent half of our day here redoing our bylaws. I mean, they've all got holes and tweaking that can go on forever. So in this case, I think this is a good start again, and we move forward with it, so.
And the policy clearly says that council as a whole has final say on, executing the policy or deciding if it's, suitable. And, in commercial circumstances, your insurance has a policy that says you could have business interruption. So if your business burns down, they will pay you what your regular sales or your income is for a certain period of time until your business can get up and going again, if you check that box off. So you're covered there, where nothing covers you residentially. And it's homes with children and families and people in our community is part of the difference. Councillor Chappelle, your light is still on, so Councillor Phillips.
Just on item 5.2, I do like the prorated version of it.
Yes,
Simply because December 31st is the cutoff. That's where your
reassessed.
assessment value is based on December 31st. So if a house burns down in March, then they're prorated for the rest of the year. If it burns down in October, then it's prorated for the rest of the year. Because as of December 31st, it's going to be assessed at land value only. So I'm fine with the prorated version of it.
So on 5.2, I noticed that in one of the other policies we were given for examples, they said, like, I've got it highlighted here on the second line, which the fire occurred and to be prorated for that year from the month following. That year from the month of the fire occurred. And everybody else uses from the month following the fire. Just wondering if it's just a little tweaking. It's not a big deal.
If we're doing it on a compassionate basis, if it burns down on June 2nd, I don't think it should go to July 1st. I think it should be effective for June 2nd. If we're doing it on a purely compassionate basis,
Okay.
I think it should be from the time of the incident.
And then do we want to put anywhere in here, like on this other one they did, an improvement means structure such as residence, garage, or commercial or industrial building? Don't need that in there? Okay. So we're on to Councillor Hutchinson.
Just for clarity, St. Albert policy does not cover structural fires. I don't know if you guys went through the whole policy, but under 17A in their policy, the occurrence of a structural fire involving loss or damage of an existing building, home, structure, or business is not a permissible reason to request for relief from an annual property tax, just for information. If council is looking at going this direction, compassionate, do we have a definition of compassionate? Your definition may be different than mine. Is that something that, it's something that we should be discussing? What is a compassionate, what's the wording here?
Grounds for property owners?
Yeah.
So all we're really talking about for compassionate grounds is fire, loss due to fire. We're not talking about anything else. Like some of the other policies, we could add things later, but this is what we're talking about, is if your house burns down, it's residential property, and it's no longer able to be can't live in it anymore? What was your phrase? I never wrote it down.
If it's no longer permanent, if it's permanently inhabitable,
Permanently inhabitable,
yeah.
right? Then we're gonna prorate. So here's a question. Are we prorating that they don't pay any of the taxes, or we're just gonna prorate the tax improvements, right? It doesn't say that on here. It just doesn't say it under guidelines, cause I have it on here a couple times. I put improvement on my list. It might say it later, but. Mr. Kraus, am I
Your worship,
incorrect on
in
that?
tax relief, it just says the municipal portion of the property tax, but does not include education or senior housing.
So can we add in there, where do you say that at?
It's on
3?
definitions.
Tax relief?
Tax relief.
So it would be discretionary cancellation, reduction, refund, or deferral of the municipal portion, so that would be the residential improvement? Can we put improvement on there? Because it's not the land, right? They still have to pay for the land. We're just giving them a break on the improvement side of things.
It's up to council. It's
Well-
drafted as the whole municipal portion right now.
Okay, so that's where I think we need to clarify. They still have to pay for the land. They still own the land is still worth a value. It's on the improvements. You're nodding. You agree that you're conceptually thinking of the same
Yes.
thing?
Correct, and the request we got was just for that portion as well, from the people who brought that back in October.
Yeah, and I think that's why they defined it as improvement on this other policy. Improvement means a structure such as a residence. So if we could add under tax relief, the residential improvement, residential property, what does it say in your tax notice? It just says improvements, right? So then, Mr. Kraus, if we change it to that concept, does it change all the procedures then?
No, your worship, so
Okay.
it's just,
Just a clarification.
so if they have a detached garage, they didn't burn down, they still pay taxes on the detached garage.
Yeah, because they still have a garage.
Okay, because we drafted more on the compassionate side, right? It's,
I guess I look at it, if they're selling the lot and it's got a garage, it's there, that lot is worth more than what the value of the lot is. It's
Yeah.
the value of the lot plus the garage, and so there is a perceived value there,
Yeah.
so.
We're trying to be compassionate and fair and yeah. I agree. Counselor Phillips, do you want to weigh in on that? Okay. Okay. So, I have something that, I saw another one, and I can't remember which community it said, but it also says that you can't have arrears. So for example, you're burning your house down because you're 2 years in behind in default of your taxes. You don't get a compassionate break. You have to be current with your property taxes. It doesn't sound very compassionate, but it's more fair. What do you guys think? If somebody has not paid their taxes for 2 years and they're asking for, I just saw it somewhere else where it said not in arrears. Counselor Hutchinson.
I just think if that's the way you're going, 5.2, you just add, if they have outstanding taxes, they aren't eligible.
So-
For that residential property though.
Yeah, so your worship, so the way 5.2 is written, so they'd only get the tax relief for the current taxation year. So if they did have arrears, they would still owe those arrears.
But this other policy said that if you were in arrears, you couldn't apply for the thing.
And I'll leave it to council if that's the way you wanna.
Counselor Caprero.
I don't know if I agree with that, because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be for compassion purposes, so, I mean, I understand sometimes things can be tough, and so I don't think that just because you may be behind a little bit on your property taxes means that, you know, when this travesty happens to you, that you don't get that compassionate thing from the town, because you're in, like, it doesn't make sense to me. So I think, I mean, if they're in arrears, they should still be eligible, but as Mr. Kraus said, it doesn't affect what
Us.
they owe, so.
Okay, I'm fine with that. It was just, I just had a note because I was comparing to the other policies.
Okay, so your worship, then there's 5.4, so you're not bound by any prior decisions, and that's just basically an out clause for council, because there might have been other circumstances in a request that you didn't grant it, or you granted more. 5.5 is just saying your council's decision is final. There's no recourse, so. And then the final section just goes through the procedure, so. And we'll develop a application form for council.
Should we have the date confirmed by fire service? And can we say that fire service can contact residents about this policy if there's a fire?
Your worship, I don't think we're too worried about determining the date of the fire. We would know, without, you know, confirming with fire department, so.
Just checking. Counselor Chappelle?
I'll make a motion that the changes that we've suggested take place and we bring it back before
Do rise and report.
Rise and Report. That we make the changes and bring it back before council at,
In
can we do it on the 9th as well, or
a
whatever
future
the,
date.
February 6th? That gives us a month to do it, or do you want to do it to council meeting prior? No, that is the next council meeting.
Yeah, let him,
No, so we have a council meeting next week, correct?
yes.
It's on the 16th, so that might be a little tight for us to,
Okay,
because we haven't developed the application form yet.
okay, so then February 6th, so we bring it to the council meeting February 6th in a new draft that's been tweaked if we can. That'd be my motion.
Okay, all in favor of that motion?
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry, discussion. Counselor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I just wanted to say again that I don't feel this policy is fair and equitable to every any person in our community. It doesn't include possibly a townhouse owner. It excludes too many people, and I am not in favor of putting this policy forward.
Well, did you want to add a townhouse to the list of properties? It's a little different than a duplex, but it is a single-family dwelling, especially if they own the lot.
No, adding that wouldn't be, I just feel in general, there's too many variables. Again, businesses, nonprofits, churches, there's too big of a pool to be going through, and to just letting this be for a residential property, to me, is not fair and equitable to the entire community.
Thank you. Did you want me to continue with the vote, or did you have a comment?
I just have a rebuttal, and that's just that insurances are different for different organizations and businesses. And in this case, you can buy insurance for a business or whatever that takes into effect all that kind of stuff. There's a difference between coming out of your own pocket in terms of a business or a church or a house. And so, I mean, you may be on something with the, you know, townhouses or duplexes, or could go into apartment buildings or whatever else. But in my day, owning apartment buildings, I had that clause for if there was a fire, what would happen, and my income would not be changed. So I think that there's different scenarios for different places, and if they wish to take that scenario, they can. I strongly feel that this is for residential homeowners, private homeowners. We don't get an abundance. We're not talking about 20 a year. We're talking maybe, like I said, hopefully one every 5 years. But in this case, it's just a nice gesture, and it's there. So if it was affecting the community with 20 a year, then I would agree with you, but one every 5 years is sort of a mute subject as far as I'm concerned. It's fair, and it's, hey, I feel for people who go through that traumatic thing in their life.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion,
Yeah.
Counselor Hutchinson?
I realize that there's other avenues and whatnot, but basing all of this on compassionate grounds is, who are we to judge that the business owner, or apartment building, that the definition of compassionate doesn't extend to them and only extends to a residential owner, so that's.
Thank you. So now if there's no further discussion, we'll vote on the motion on the table. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So moving forward in the agenda. We have correspondence for action, and there's none today. Correspondence for information of any of the items from 9.1 to 9.9. Does anybody want to pull anything out and have a discussion on any of those items? Counselor Hutchinson?
I just wanted to bring to the attention that 9.4 about the drought status and management, that's been in the forefront of the news in the past week or so. Just wondering if that is something that we would instruct admin to, they have, 4 suggestions. Is this something that would be of interest and of need for the town to go forward and do any of the actions that are on there?
Mr. Kraus, have we had any notice from Alberta government that there's a water supply shortage from the North Saskatchewan River?
Your worship, no, not officially for that, so, but of the 4, I know we're at 50% of our draw license right now, so we're only there, so. But
Significantly different for our community because we pull the water out of the river, and the dam can always get lowered until there's an emergency where they'll give you a warning saying that there's a shortage at the dam. They've had that before, but I don't know if it ever has affected us. So, Mr. Kraus, in your opinion, do we have to move forward with any of those items?
Your worship, we'll review and we'll report back to council.
Thank you very much. Is there any other items from 9.1 to 9.9 that anybody else would like to discuss? Would somebody like to make a motion? Counselor Phillips?
Yes, I'll make a motion to accept items 9.1 through 9.9 as information.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So moving on to 10, I have no, the current council committee appointments, so that's been updated as we have a vacancy on council, and so everybody has a copy of that. Any problems or inaccuracies on that current council committee appointments sheet? Seeing none.
Yeah, your worship, it's just there for information.
Yeah,
For
I'm just
council,
want to
yeah.
make sure that it's correct, right? So, 10.1, I have no report this month. 10.2, Counselor Auld, did you want to bring anything that wasn't included on your report? Counselor Caprero, did you want to talk about anything on your report?
Well, we had an interesting meeting with the chamber. This was Councillor Shipbolt, myself, and Mr. Kraus. So they had done a survey with the businesses that are under them regarding the Rural Renewal Stream Program. And it does seem like a lot of the businesses in town are in favor of this program. So I know that the town is going to be doing their own survey for it as well. So it'll be interesting to see, but it sounds like there could potentially be good buy-in on it. So, yeah, no, that's it.
Thank you very much. Counselor Hutchinson?
Yeah, I had the rec board meeting, which the report is included in the next section, but just a few highlights that the grant's been awarded for the pool lift. So I think that's ordered and going to be installed. 17 fitness classes are running. There was an inquiry on the rec agreement and where that is sitting, and as far as I know, it'll be going to ICC before it obviously comes back to council for approval. Rocky Learning Council, we had the AGM and a regular meeting. Farther up in correspondence under Rocky Learning Center 9.9 is a year in review. If nobody's looked at that yet, it's got some really good information on what Rocky Learning Council does. Senior housing, we had RFD go out for a new nurse call system. The previous system was the original system that was installed when the building was built, and of course 10 plus years technology has changed just a little bit, so that they're actually starting work on that right away. A new program director was hired. Nellie had retired after, I'm gonna say 35 years. So there's actually 2 people that have taken that position. So it'll be interesting to see what new activities and whatnot they have planned. The Christmas gifts, the whole Christmas season for the residents was above and beyond the support that they got from community groups, bringing gifts in. There was even one of the residents saying, "What, we get more presents?" So that was really positive to see. 3 lodge vacancies as of, I believe it was the end of December, and we're in the process of doing the CEA performance appraisal. And that's about it.
I went to the FCSSAA conference at the end of November, so my report's attached there. The one thing that we did talk about at our policing committee, Councillor Shipple was there as well, is we had asked our staff sergeant about the population per officer in town versus county, and how that affects our percentage of capital that we're paying on that, because the RCMP long-term plan was submitted there, and she was going to talk to K Division and see if maybe that's something that can be adjusted, because our population per officer in town and population per officer out in the county there's a gap, and potentially we could get our percentage of capital that we pay in changed a little bit. So, to be determined on that front. And as far as the Parkland Regional Library Board Committee, I'm on the executive committee. I'm also on their policy revision committee, so that'll be happening here in February. They want to revise some of their policies. And the topic of, this topic never goes away, the topic of what population numbers are being used in there is still a hot, contentious topic. So that's something that's going to be coming up in February, as far as which population numbers are being used for the Parkland Regional Library Board requisitions, whether it's Treasury Board, Municipal Affairs numbers, or census numbers, and that's a to be determined topic that's going to be coming up there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shipple, did you have something more to add?
Nope, that's it.
Councillor Shipple?
No, I have nothing other than what's in my report. If anybody has any questions, feel free to answer them.
Thank you very much. So I'll make a motion to accept 10.2 for information. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So now we have 11 administrative reports. I don't have any numbers, but
Yeah, your worship, so the intent here is just provide it for information for council and public information, but if council has any questions, I'll try to answer them for you.
so to pass that, would I go 11 point, there's no numbers on mine. Would I go 11.1 to 11.1?
No, it could be just one, it's just one report, really.
So just go 11.1?
One.
I just do have one question.
Yeah,
Just,
absolutely, thank you.
Just on Wes's report, have we heard anything on the CFEP grant for the spray park, or not spray park, sorry, pump track society? Have we had any answers?
Yeah,
back
I
yet
met
on
with the Bike Park Society on Friday. They were not successful in the CFEP grant, but they still do have quite a bit of corporate sponsorship in the community. They are scheduled to be a delegation next week to talk to council about that project.
So does that mean that the money that we set aside earlier in last year would not goes back, it can be reduced off of our budget?
So your worship, right now, council has allocated $250,000 in the 2024 budget for that project. And I think that will be a discussion with the Bike Park Society next week of how to proceed.
So, but my understanding was when we discussed that, it was contingent so that they could get their grant, and because now they haven't got their grant, could that money go back into our budget? Is it a
You're-
possibility?
It's a possibility, your worship. I mean, you're right, the council did approve that, and that's what it said in the letter. The 250,000 was contingent on the CFAP application. I believe their request to council is they could probably proceed without the CFAP. They have enough community support, they believe. So that will be the discussion and ask of council next week by the Bike Park Society.
Thank you for clarifying.
I don't want to take away their presentation to council, so.
No, I just wanted
know.
a simple yes or no
No,
answer. Counselor Chappelle.
I have a question about the rec report, and that's to do with the bathrooms at the spray park. And it says in here that the bathrooms aren't going to be completed till spring. Back in the day when the budget was approved on my very first council meeting after I was voted in, I think it was 300,000 was put towards a bathroom facility there, and in the location a change, there were some things that happened. I guess the question I'm having is there a surplus of monies that are left from the bathroom thing, or
Yeah.
I just don't know where that's at.
So, I can't quote you exact numbers, Counselor. So yeah, the budget was, I think, 300,000. I think the project came in at around 200,000 when it tendered, so there's a $100,000 that is not required for that project. So that would just go back into the reserve that it came from, so.
If
So-
we wanted to, could we say that that money goes towards the 2024 budget and reduce our budget?
Well, the money, I would have to pull out the 2023 budget to see where that funding came from, but I'm sure it was reserve. So it just stays in that reserve. So it wouldn't, unless council takes money out of reserves to supplement the operating budget, but that would be a question for council, but you've already approved the budget, so. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yep, he has
100%
another
you
one.
did.
Counselor,
Perfect, thank you.
Counselor
Appreciate that.
Chappelle. Do you have another question?
I do. Again, Parks and Rec, and this has to do with public skating. Last year, there was a group of people that had talked to me about, last year we had a different problem. There was snow on the oval and snow on the arena outside, and no public skating in the arena. This year we have no ice outside due to weather, and no public skating in the arena. And so I dug out an email, and it was from January of 2023 that said that in the future we'd see if that could happen. And I just don't know how does that happen, that in this case this year again there's no public skating on some days during the school break.
Yeah.
And I don't know how, I know what to do.
Yeah, so your worship, to answer Council Shippold, so recognizing we didn't have the oval, the outdoor rink, we actually opened up quite a bit more public skating over the Christmas break. The only days that there was not public skating is when hockey had the day booked. But we are now putting the oval in and the outdoor rink. I think we did a Facebook post of the whole week where public skating was open.
Yes, there was.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. It's under control?
It's under
Appreciate
control.
that.
Does that conclude your, okay. So does anybody else have any questions or comments about the administrative reports for the CEO and departments? Seeing none, I can make a motion to accept I'll call it 11.1 for information. No discussion on that item. Seeing none, I'll call that to vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So we move now into our action list for January 9th of 2024.
Thank you, your worship. So for the first open one, our economic development department is working on that, so that is in progress. And the other open one was actually dealt with by council today on the awards program, so that is it.
And the rural renewal stream, like, I got an email from the chamber saying that 90% of the people that were contacted were in favor of it, and they've sent out the little QR code thing again. Was the latest email I got from the chamber at my business. And so are we still investigating that? Have we made any steps forward? I'm worried about that there's a deadline date, because there was, like, last year there was a deadline date, correct?
Yeah, so what council has asked administration to do was to do a survey that went out with all of our business licenses. So it would go out to approximately 600 businesses with a lot more detailed questions for us to gauge it better. So we are doing that right now. So by the end of the month, hope we'd probably have a good response, I would say, and then we can bring a report back to council.
So is there a deadline for this program or not then?
I would have to verify that, your worship. I think you can apply throughout the year just to get the status,
'Cause-
but I would have to verify that.
Because when you and I talked about it the previous year, that the deadline was like March 11th or something, and we couldn't, but maybe that was a different program.
I believe that was a different program, your worship, but we'll verify. But I think it's just being recognized, so they're established as a community, so I don't think there is a deadline, but I'll verify that.
And business licenses are going out this week. It's not by email, right? They're getting mailed out.
They were mailed out last week.
She just handed me mine today. They haven't been mailed out yet. She went up to the mail and they haven't been mailed out yet.
No, they have been mailed.
Why would mine not have got mailed last week? Okay. Okay. Maybe she said it is. Sorry, she handed it to me and said she got it from the mail, so whatever that means. Okay,
Well, 600 went out, so maybe 300 went out last week and 300
that's fine.
yesterday.
No, I
so-
just wanted to clarify so that, and it's a document in the letter for business licenses, or is it?
If council would like, I'll grab an example off my desk and show you right now.
I just wanted to know, is there a link or is there
There's
a
both a
survey
link
in
and
the-
a QR code
Okay.
that will take you directly to the survey. It is also on our website, and the survey will it really does ask you to read about the program and then answer the questions. You want to learn more or you're not eligible are the two. If you're not eligible, the survey ends. And if you want to know more, that's where we ask the questions such as how many positions do you have? What kind of support would you do? What would your business's role be in this program? Because it's really a collaborative effort.
Perfect. I just wanted to know how you access the survey. So that's perfect. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions about the action list? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Counselor Caprero,
I'll make a motion to accept the action list as information.
thank you very much. Seeing there's no further discussion, I'll call that to vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Do we have any notices of motion today? Seeing none. Just before we go into closed session, Mr. Kraus, I just wanted to make sure that the advice from officials has nothing to do with me personally. When we discuss it, it's about the items that you're giving to us. I don't know. I don't have any documentation about what our closed session items are.
No, so your worship, as our discussion on last Thursday, the deputy mayor asked this to be put on the agenda.
Okay, so my lawyer has requested that I do not go into closed session to discuss anything about me personally unless she is present. And she needs notification. So does that change what we're doing? I thought we were gonna be talking to you today about that.
No, this is a council, this is a,
So it's not
Council
actually
request.
advice from officials, it's something different, right?
no, your worship, so, under FOIP, advice from officials, could be consultations and deliberations involving officers or employees of a public body. So, and that was, basically the topic the deputy mayor wanted to discuss.
Okay, so I'm not gonna be attending this without my lawyer present. So I'm gonna break for recess, and, Counselor Chappelle, your light is on.
Oh, my light is on because I was gonna have a question about if we're doing administrative inquiries during these meetings or if they're only at council meetings now.
Yeah, so that, when we adopted the governance and priority committee agenda, we did not put administrative inquiries in here because we had administrative reports where those questions would probably come up. But does that make sense? And then at council meetings, we'd still have administrative inquiries, just to answer questions from council, where there's no department reports, so.
Thank
Did you have a question that we missed?
No, they can wait till next week.
Okay. So I'm requesting that we remove the closed session from today until we can notify my lawyer to attend. Or else I'll recess and the deputy mayor can take over the meeting, but I will not be attending on advice from my lawyer. Counselor Hutchinson.
I guess I just don't, I question, okay, so we've adopted the agenda already, it's on there. How, we just don't remove it, we still would continue forward with a closed session because it's on the agenda.
Well, we can table it.
I'm fine with leaving it on.
So I make a motion to table the closed session to a future meeting when my lawyer can be present. Do we have any discussion on that motion? Counselor Ald.
I'm not in favor of that. It just, if we need to table agenda items every time there's gonna be a conversation, it's gonna drag on for months, so I'm not in favor of that motion.
Okay, but this clearly has nothing to do with the business of the town. It's just an inter-council discussion. And due to the disruptive, what happens during the last one that we had a closed session that I attended, I refuse to, and upon advice of my lawyer, to participate without a third party there, suggesting my lawyer or the town's lawyer. I'll pay my lawyer to be there so that it doesn't become disruptive where names are called and things like that. Counselor Caprero.
If you don't want to be there, that's fine. If you want to remove yourself, but I would still like to have a closed session item. I just have a couple of questions that I'd like asked or answered, sorry.
So that's different than what it was explained. If we're getting advice from officials, that's different than we're having a conversation. So if we're talking about specific items. That's different than having a chat amongst ourselves. What is going to be on the agenda? Counselor Ald.
It would be a closed session item.
But we're allowed to know with FOIP and to be transparent. So I guess I'll just call it to a vote. The motion on the table is that we table this motion of a closed session where we're gonna have a discussion until my lawyer or the town's lawyer can be present to make sure that it goes well. All in favor of that motion? Oh, did you have more discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted some clarity, and I had sent an email prior about closed sessions. Does that not, if by chance a lawyer is present, do we not have to have a resolution made by council to have another person in our closed sessions?
No, a lawyer can keep things confidential, but Mr. Kraus, would you like to answer that? Because our lawyer has attended a number of closed sessions before.
The people that attend closed sessions are approved by council to attend.
All right. No other discussion, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion of tabling this closed session until a lawyer or other third party can be there? All in favor? And those opposed? I'm sorry, Councillor Schippel, you can't abstain. Are you just needing another moment to decide?
I'm not sure because I don't have enough information before me to know what the topic of discussion is.
Yeah, if it,
If I'm making an uninformed decision, I don't think that that's appropriate. And so in this case, I've heard a couple comments here. You've made a comment, Your Worship, about it being about you. And I haven't heard that from anybody else, so I'm not sure if it's about you or not about you. So I'm sitting here and the question is, I'm confused because I don't want to make an uninformed decision, and that's what I've been asked to do.
so I thought it was advice from officials where Mr. Kraus would be talking about us about items coming up. Councillor Caprero asked when we were going over the agenda that we have a discussion amongst ourselves about how we're gonna move forward after what happened at the last meeting in a nutshell, but you can clarify my take on it. So on advice of my lawyer, I'm not gonna go into one of those meetings again. Councillor Caprero, would you like to answer?
It was on the hopes of just having a fruitful conversation about everything, but it wasn't directly gonna be pointed at Mayor Beach. But again, Mayor Beach, if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't wanna be there, to me, doesn't matter. If you can leave, if you wanna leave, that's all.
So I just don't think that it's necessary to have a discussion on nothing. There's nothing presented ahead of time for us to prepare.
That's not true, because there was emails sent regarding what it was actually gonna be about.
So I will vote against the motion, Your Worship.
Okay. Thank you very much. And so that motion is defeated, and I'm calling a recess for 10 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So we're going to be heading into closed session. So I just want to make a motion that we do that. So call that to a vote. Sorry? Oh, all in favor. Sorry. And none opposed. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you. So we are out of closed session now, and we don't have any resolutions coming out of it. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 4:40 PM.